On the afternoon of November 24, 1971, a man dressed in a dark suit, black tie, and neatly polished shoes boarded Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305, a Boeing 727, at the Portland International Airport, bound for Seattle. At first glance, he seemed like any other business traveler, blending seamlessly into the crowd of passengers rushing to their gates. But this man was about to commit one of the most audacious and perplexing crimes in American history, a skyjacking that would baffle investigators for decades. He was polite, almost unassuming, yet calm, a stark contrast to the chaos he was about to unleash. He handed the flight attendant a note. According to later testimonies, she initially thought it was a simple request or perhaps a joke. But when he leaned closer, whispering that he had a bomb, the gravity of the situation became terrifyingly clear. The note read like something out of a movie: "I have a bomb. I want $200,000 in cash, for parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to refuel the plane." For context, $200,000 in 1971 is roughly equivalent to $1.4 million today. The demands were specific, precise, and professional. The crew followed his instructions. Airline and airport officials scrambled to comply, knowing that any misstep could endanger dozens of lives. Once the ransom and parachutes were delivered, the plane took off again, now carrying both the passengers and a growing legend. The mysterious man had only one name: Dan Cooper, later mistakenly referred to as D.B. Cooper by the media. As the Boeing 727 climbed into the gray skies of the Pacific Northwest, Cooper's intentions became clearer. Somewhere over the rugged forests of Washington state, he opened the rear stairway of the plane, and vanished into the night with the ransom and a parachute, leaving authorities and the nation stunned. No one saw him land. No trace of him was ever definitively found. The story of D.B. Cooper immediately gripped the American public. News outlets ran headlines that seemed almost incredulous: "Skyjacker escapes with $200,000, mystery man vanishes in mid-air." It was unlike anything the FBI or law enforcement had encountered. Air piracy had occurred before, but the methodical, calm, and professional execution of Cooper's plan set him apart. Authorities began piecing together the flight's timeline. Flight attendants described a man in his mid-40s, wearing a dark suit, with thick black-rimmed glasses, and speaking with a measured tone. He had purchased a one-way ticket, cash only, and carried a briefcase. His demeanor was polite yet commanding, exuding a confidence that suggested he knew exactly what he was doing. The crew complied with his demands without hesitation. He tied up the two pilots with their own neckties and instructed the plane's captain, William Scott, and co-pilot, Donald Peterson, to follow his instructions precisely. Cooper's plan had been meticulous. He even requested that the plane be flown at a lower altitude, around 10,000 feet, and with the rear stairs lowered, an unusual request that would facilitate his escape. By the time the plane approached the skies over southwestern Washington, Cooper had prepared his final act. He donned a parachute, took the briefcase filled with cash, and with a calm that belied the peril of the situation, stepped out into the darkness. The 727's rear stairs descended into the night, and Cooper leapt into history. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI, quickly took the case. Known internally as Hijacking 71-11, it became one of the agency's most enduring investigations. Agents combed the skies, the forests, and the rivers. Every possible lead was pursued. They analyzed the ransom money, examined flight patterns, and interviewed the flight crew repeatedly, hoping for a clue. Yet the evidence was frustratingly sparse. There were no eyewitnesses to the jump, no abandoned parachutes, no fingerprints beyond what the hijacker had left in the cabin. It was as if Cooper had vanished into thin air. For law enforcement, it was both a logistical nightmare and a psychological puzzle. How could a man execute such a daring crime and simply disappear without a trace? Despite the challenges, the FBI meticulously documented every clue. They considered every angle, from an experienced military parachutist to a local thrill-seeker with knowledge of the Pacific Northwest terrain. Yet every theory seemed plausible and implausible at the same time. Cooper had prepared, he had trained, and he had planned for every contingency, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. In 1980, 9 years after the hijacking, a boy digging along the Columbia River near Vancouver, Washington, discovered 5,820 bills buried in the sand. The serial numbers matched the ransom money, providing the only physical evidence of Cooper's fate. This discovery fueled decades of speculation. Some believed it was proof that Cooper had died during the jump, his body lost in the dense wilderness. Others argued that he had intentionally left the money as a breadcrumb, taunt to the authorities, or perhaps as part of a more elaborate plan that remains unknown. Yet no additional evidence ever surfaced. Not a parachute, not a body, not a shred of clothing. Cooper had taken meticulous measures to ensure that his trail ended in mystery. For the FBI, the Columbia River money was both a breakthrough and a dead end, a clue that tantalized more than it resolved. Over the decades, the mystery of D.B. Cooper has attracted countless theories about his identity. Some suggested he was a former paratrooper or military pilot, possessing the skills necessary to survive a nighttime jump into a forested wilderness. Others speculated he was a seasoned criminal, a master of disguise and misdirection. Theories ranged from the plausible to the bizarre. One suggested he perished in the jump, carried away by the elements. Another proposed he escaped to Mexico or even abroad, living a quiet, secretive life with the ransom. Some believed he died in a plane crash, while others imagined he started a new life under a different name, never to be discovered. The FBI's investigations included exhaustive searches, interviews, and forensic analyses. Over 800 suspects were considered at one point, but none could be definitively linked to the crime. Among the most intriguing was Richard Floyd McCoy, a former Green Beret who hijacked a plane in 1972 using similar methods, but differences in planning and execution eventually cleared him. Even decades later, the case continues to captivate investigators. The FBI officially closed the active investigation in 2016, after 45 years of effort, citing the impossibility of further progress. Yet the story lives on, with amateur sleuths, historians, and true crime enthusiasts continuing to speculate. In recent years, advances in forensic technology and digital mapping have reopened possibilities. Satellite imagery, DNA analysis, and geographic profiling could one day shed light on Cooper's fate. But as of now, the man who jumped from Flight 305 remains unidentified, his legend intact. We may never know the full story of D.B. Cooper. Did he survive the treacherous jump into the wilderness? Did he bury the money and disappear, or was he swept away by the elements, leaving only the mystery behind? The Columbia River find tantalizes, hinting that perhaps some part of the story remains hidden in plain sight. The audacity of the crime, the meticulous planning, and the complete disappearance of the perpetrator make D.B. Cooper a figure unlike any other in American criminal history. His story is not just about theft or escape, it's about the mystery of human ingenuity, the allure of the unknown, and the enduring fascination with someone who defied the odds and vanished into legend. In a world obsessed with instant information and surveillance, the story of D.B. Cooper reminds us that some mysteries remain impenetrable. For over 50 years, investigators, writers, and enthusiasts have tried to unravel the truth. Yet Cooper's legend endures, a testament to the audacity of one man and the power of a story that refuses to die. The skies of the Pacific Northwest still carry whispers of that November night. Somewhere out there, perhaps, the man known only as D.B. Cooper walks free, a ghost of the past, forever a symbol of mystery, daring, and the unknown. His jump into history was literal and metaphorical. He soared into legend, leaving behind a tale that continues to captivate, mystify, and inspire. The man who became a national enigma, a subject of speculation, and a symbol of daring and ingenuity, will forever be remembered, not for the money he stole, but for the story he created, the greatest unsolved skyjacking in American history.